Welcome to section 3.3, part 2, a continuation of exponents, in which we're going to delve into the savings plan formula to find the final amount with a lump sum, also with payments, and then a combination of both, and then also to find the loan payment for the length of a loan, how much your monthly payment would be. We'll also go through some Excel formulas using the future value and payment. We won't be using a present value today, but I did put it up here on our notes so that you could see all of the different options we have. So what I've done is I've taken a couple of numbers to be similar to your problems in section 3.3, part B, numbers 14 to 41. And so here's our first example. This one we're going to be finding the final amount, and you'll notice all of the numbers within the box or the table are the exact same. The difference that we're going to be calculating and looking at will be the number of compounds. A compound means that I get the interest, the money from the interest a certain number of times a year. So with a simple interest, you just get your interest compounded into your bank account or your investment just once at the end of the year. Quarterly means that I get a teeny bit of that interest in the first couple of months, and then I get a teeny more in the next couple, or after the next 3, because there's 12 months in a year, and then I get a little bit more interest. So what's happening is I'm getting a little interest in that first part. Then the second part, I'm actually getting the interest plus a little bit more from the interest that compounded in the first 3 months. And then the next 3 months, I get that interest, but it's being multiplied to the interest that I gained in the previous compounds. So the more compounds you get, the more money you get. So daily means that I get a little bit adding upon itself and upon itself and upon itself. So by the end of the year, I actually end up getting more than 5% of the total that I started with. Simple interest, it's exactly 5%. Okay, so what we're going to do first is using our formulas up here. And we're going to use our calculator and just calculate it all by hand. And then we're going to use the Excel capabilities, and I'm going to show you a couple of different ways to do that. So the first thing we're going to do is I need to find which of these formulas finds the final amount for this example. So I have some sort of principal. I'm not making any payments. So I'm going to come up here, and this is my formula. Savings plan for a lump sum. And since I already have it in here, I'm just going to copy and paste it. This is rather beneficial if you missed my other tutorials. To insert an equation, you go to Insert, over here is Equation, and then you type in your fractions and your parentheses to make it match exactly what you want. So I would say A equals, oh, it's going to do it inside the same one. I'm going to hurry and do it quick so that those of you who missed the other ones can get caught up with us. So I insert my formula. I'm going to do capital A equals capital P, so I have my final amount equals my initial amount, or the principal. And I can do Shift 9 for a parenthesis, or I can come up here and give myself some brackets right here, and that'll give me my opening and closing as well. I'm going to just do Shift 9 because it's fast for me. And then 1 plus, then I need a fraction, and I can come up here and do this, or I can type in R and then the divide sign. You can either do that down by your question mark key or up by your number lock key, R over N, and then press the space bar, and it'll format it into kind of a nice set of fractions. Then I'm going to close my parenthesis. Now notice when I did my inserted bracket up here, these set of parentheses, it will extend the parentheses to include everything, so it kind of looks nice, but this way is faster. Either way works. And then to do my script, I would need to highlight what I want to be raised to the exponent and press this, or I can just do Shift 6 to say I'm raising it to the NY, and then press my space bar again, and it'll get it up into the exponent. Okay, so I have two different ways to do that. Oh, and it extended my parentheses as well. Okay, so now that I have that up and going, and I'm just going to copy and paste this again to show my work, which is kind of nice rather than doing it by hand, because then you don't have to type or write it all out. However, it is pretty fast to write it by hand. Okay, so I'm going to put in my principal, which is 250. I need to replace this rate up here, and I have to change that to a decimal, so it's 0.05. N, this is going to change for my 4 different examples up here. So I can put a 1 there for the simple interest, and you'll notice if I put a 1 there, 0.05 divided by 1 is just 0.05, and N is 1 times Y will leave me with a Y, and that is the same formula as your simple interest formula. So in many cases, I actually tell my students, don't memorize the simple interest formula, because you can get it by just memorizing the savings plan formula. Okay, and then 1, and I'm going to put times here so that it doesn't look like the number of years, so that everything is 110. It's 1 times 10. Okay, so now to finish this out, I can either keep going by hand, I can type things in my calculator, or I can type things into Excel because it also calculates like a calculator. So I'm going to come over here. If you have a graphing calculator or have downloaded the Wabbit Emu, you can type it all in at once and it'll spit out the information. So I'm going to do that first, and then I'm going to walk you through what a scientific calculator user might do. So I'm going to type it in exactly as I see it. 250 parenthesis 1 plus, and if you have the Wabbit Emu on your computer screen, you can use your number pad to the side, which kind of speeds things up. 0.05 over, in our case, 1. Then I have to do my parenthesis, raise it to 1 times 10. I could do 1 times 10 there, but I can do that in my head quickly and just do 10. Press enter, and there's our answer. So I'm going to come over here and press equals, give myself a dollar value, 407 point, and round that to the nearest penny, which is 22 cents. And there we go, and I can even copy and paste this. Oops. Is that still inside my... There we go. Copy, paste. There we go. So I filled in part of my my table right there. Those of you with a scientific calculator will have to go through this using your order of operations. If you don't have a scientific calculator and have gone through this with my graphing calculator, go ahead and skip this part in the video, and then I'm going to show you how to do Excel next. So start up again when you see Excel. Those of you with a scientific calculator, your order of operations are please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, or PEMDAS, parentheses first. So I need to do what's inside these parentheses first. And within these parentheses, I also need to do the order of operations correctly. So I see 2 operations, addition and division, so I need to do the division first. So in your calculator, you'll do 0.05, divide it by number of n, and I know in this case it's just 0.05, but I'm going to show you how to do it so that on the other ones, when you have quarterly, monthly, and daily, that it'll be the same process. So you do the division part first and press enter. Your screen, because you just have a scientific, will only show 0.05. Now you need to add 1 to finish up the parentheses. Press enter. Okay, so that's finished the parentheses. Now I have a couple more things or operations. I have multiplication and exponent. So after parentheses comes exponent. So I need to raise this to 10. In my case, I'm going to use this. You'll probably have an X to the Y or Y to the X button. So you're going to press that, and it's 10. Raise that to the 10 and press enter. You should have 1.62. And then you need to times this to finish out the very last operation by 250. There we go, and it's the exact same thing. Now if that was a little too much, we can also go into Microsoft Excel. So I'm going to bring up Excel, Okay, and notice I have everything mapped out. I'm going to do this in just a minute. However, I'm just going to show you how to do this calculating exactly in Microsoft Excel. So I can go through and I can type 250, oh, I need to press times, parenthesis, 1 plus 0.05 over, in our case, 1, close the parenthesis, and raise it to the 10. And there we go. So we can use this as well, and that's kind of fast. An even faster way, if you've typed everything out into your equation editor, you can copy this and press equals, Control V to paste. And one thing you have to do here, put a times sign, because Microsoft Excel doesn't know what's going on in between numbers and parentheses, and press enter. So that way's really fast. So if you know how to type it into the equation editor, that is probably my favorite way of doing it by hand. Okay, so we can go through and do this each one individually, or now we can use Excel to fill this in over here. You'll notice that I've only typed in the first 3, but every single one of these is the same. So I could go through and I can type this in over and over, or I can left click and highlight these 3, unclick, come down here, click, and drag, and it fills it in for me. So now I just need to use Excel. In this case, instead of typing in numbers like I did over here, I'm going to cell reference. So this one, remember the equation. If not, then have it close at hand so that you can reference back to it. So I'm going to press equals, and the equation says P, so I'm going to reference the principal, then times parenthesis 1 plus R, so I'm going to reference the R, divided by, now you'll notice up here it's a little bit different than what is in your homework from 14 to 25, 14 to 29. It's a little bit different because they put n equals. Now the reason I didn't do n equals is I want to reference these as well. So I put n over here so that I can reference this to do the calculations. And then I need to close the parenthesis and then raise it to the ny. So Shift 6, n times y. Now I'm going to verify that both of those are in the exponent. So I'm going to group them together with a set of parentheses. So I'm going to open the parenthesis, put the n, times y, and close the parenthesis for the exponent. And there you go. And you'll notice I have this formatted down here as money. To do that, you go to Format Cell and go to Currency. So that's where that was formatted. Now I'm going to just highlight this. This formula here is cell referencing 4 cells above it. 1, 2, 3, 4. So if I click and drag this over, it's going to reference the 4 cells above it for the same calculation. There we go. So to fill that whole thing in, we just pull it over, and I'm going to copy and paste that into here. Oops. There we go. So now it's all finished, and I'm going to highlight these because this is the answer. And I'm going to highlight them in yellow. So that was pretty fast. So we have lots of different ways that we can go about this by using Excel and different capabilities with calculators. Okay, the last way of doing this is using the Excel formulas right here. And because this one is looking for the future final amount, I'm going to use the future value formula. Now Microsoft Excel is going to automatically assume that this is a future value of a loan or money away from me. So it's going to end up being red. To counteract that, because this is an investment, I'm going to put a negative in front of the future value so that it gives me a positive number. So I'm going to come back into here, and just underneath of this, where we did all of our formulas, I'm going to use the Microsoft Excel method and press equals negative FV for future value and open the parenthesis. Now it's just asking for all of the information, and you don't have to have the formula memorized, you can just type everything in. So it says cell reference the rate, in which I do. The only difference here is that you must remember at all times when you use the future value formula, if you are compounding, you must divide by n for the rate. And that's not prompted down underneath there for you, so you just need to remember that. Then press comma, the number of periods. Now in this one, I'm only compounded 10 times because it happens once a year. But when I click and drag this, I want it to compound the quarterly, monthly, and daily amounts. So I'm going to cell reference this even though it doesn't change anything and do n times y, which coincidentally is the exact same thing as what happens in the exponent for your formula. Parenthesis, payment, we are not making payments here, so I'm going to do 0, but I do have a present value, which is my principal. And I don't need the type, so I'm just going to press enter and it'll fill it in. And it even matches, which is good news for us. And to finish filling it in, we just click and drag. So we have, let's see, one way of doing it was typing it in. The second way of doing it was copying and pasting from the equation editor and making sure that we put a time sign in there. If you don't do that, it'll pop up with an error message saying that you need to fix that. And I didn't format those to money. You can do that. Over here, we can type it in as cell referencing using the formula or using the Microsoft Excel version, which is just the future value. It's the built-in formula into Microsoft Excel. So we have lots of different ways, or you could also use your calculator, which we talked about earlier as well. So this next one, let's move into number 2. The exact same process. I'm going to show it all 4 ways just to make sure that you're comfortable and know that you have any amount of tools at your fingertips. Feel free to skip forward in the video to whichever one that you find most pleasing to you, or if you want to have a review of all 4, then go ahead and stay with me on all of them. Okay, so the first thing we need to do, and I'm going to review the formula first by copying and pasting this because we already talked about typing it in, and I'm just going to paste it down here, and I'm going to paste it again so that I have my steps in order, my formula, and then substituting. In this case I have 515 for the principal. The rate is 3.2. Changing that to a decimal is 0.032. Remember, move it over twice to the left. In this case, we have a 1 here, and then we'll change it to 4, 12, and 365. So I'm going to change it up here to 1 times, and the number of years is 8. Oh, oops. So if I wanted to show the formula method for every single one of these, I'm just going to copy and paste and change this n down here to 4. And don't forget it's up here as well in the exponent. Change that to a 4. Change this to a 12. That to a 12. And change it again to 365. Change it again to 365. Now I'm usually a tactile and visual learner, which means I really like writing down math. This is an advantage using Word, is just by pressing Control V, you can kind of just paste everything down and change a little bit. But one advantage of using paper and pencil is that every time you write it down, it ingrains that formula one more step in your mind. Okay, so now I can either use my calculator, which I'm going to go through once again, or Microsoft Excel by typing this in, or Microsoft Excel by copying this in, or the future value of Microsoft Excel. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to type it in like a graphing calculator. If you want to skip forward because you're using a scientific calculator, skip forward just a little bit until you see the scientific stuff going on, which is 1 step at a time. Okay, graphing calculator people, we have 515. Because this is a calculator, I don't need a time sign, so I'm just going to do my parenthesis and then do 1 plus, and I'm using my number pad to the right to speed myself up, 0.032 divided by, in our case, 1. close parenthesis, and then raise this to, this is going to change, but our first one is 8, and then press enter. And there we go. So that's the answer to our first one. Now, if you want to continue using your calculator, but just change it like we did over here, I'm going to press second entry. Do you see enter? And it's going to type in the exact same thing, and just using my arrow buttons, I can come over and change n to 4 for quarterly. And then I need to come over and make sure that I change my exponent. 4 times 8 is 32. Press enter. There we go. So that's another fast way of doing all 4 of those at once. In fact, let's continue, and we can do second entry, and then using my arrow button over, change this to 12. Now notice it's going to delete this parenthesis if I type in the 2. So I'm going to do second insert to insert the 2 here so that it doesn't delete it. I could delete it and then just continue filling in what I have. Okay, now I have 12 times 8. If I want the calculator to calculate that, I need both of those being in the exponent. So I'm going to use my parentheses. 12 times 8, close the parenthesis, and press enter. And that will be the answer for the next one. So I'm going to type that in just to do a double check when we do Microsoft Excel. That rounds up to 59 cents. This one is 664.58, and this one is 665.03. The benefit of doing this in Microsoft Excel and then copying and pasting, you'll notice that it pasted in the $ for me as well because I formatted those. In this, I would have to go through and make sure that I put in my $. Okay, and then I could do one more by doing 365 times 8. But I'm going to come into Microsoft Excel and calculate it like I would a calculator. So we're going to type in equals. Ours was, if you forgot, I have it over here, 515 is the principal. Close the I have to do times, open parenthesis. Then I do 1 plus 0.032 over, so that was the rate over n. In this case, actually, since we didn't do the last one, let's do 365. Close the parenthesis, and then raise this, and make sure you put this in parentheses. NY is 365. My number of years is 8, so I'm going to times that by 8. Close the parenthesis. There we go. And you'll notice that it's getting increasingly larger. This was 665.25. But everything was the exact same. 515, 3.2%, 8 years. So what was changing? The compounds. So I get a little bit more the more compounds I have. In this case, a couple of dollars compared to the simple interest. And some of you are thinking, well, that's not a lot. But in the end, it does end up building upon itself and building upon itself, especially if you're going to be adding in payments as well. Okay, so that was typing it in this way. Now we can also type it in using Microsoft Excel's negative future value. And then it's asking for the information of the rate and such. Or we can go through and copy and paste this. Copy equals Control V. This really speeds things up. In Math 108, make sure you put a time sign there. In Math 108, you actually have to turn things in using a Word document. So I think this really helps to show your work by inserting the equation, and then instead of typing it into the calculator or retyping it into Excel, you just copy and paste it in, and it really speeds things up with 108. So that's my favorite tool there. And there we go. It's the exact same thing as we got before, which is what we wanted. Okay, so let's come over here, and if I have a couple of the same thing, like I do on numbers 14 to 29, I'm going to highlight these and drag it over because I already typed it in on the first row. And you'll say, well, wait a minute, the percent or the rate was 3.2. And if I click on it, you can see it really is 3.2, but I can't see it down here. I'm going to highlight those and say, wait a minute, I want to format those cells a couple of decimal places. In our case, I only need one, so I'm going to do that so that it shows up. Okay, so now again we have two different ways. We can type this in using the formula, which I'm going to go ahead and do because I think it's important to hit that formula as many times as possible. And then underneath I'm going to show you how to do the future value, which you could also do within the table as well. Okay, let's go ahead. I told people I would do the scientific method, so I'm going to come back in here, or the scientific calculator. I'm sorry, those of you who don't have a scientific calculator, go ahead and skip this part. Those of you who are with a scientific calculator, I apologize, I almost forgot to go through this. Okay, scientific calculator people, we're going to go inside the parentheses and do within there first, doing the order of operations, which means I need to do the division first, and I'm going to go ahead and do this last one. So 0.032 divided by 365, press enter. Okay, now I need to add 1 and then raise that to the power because the order of operations says parentheses first. Within the parentheses I had multiplication and or division and addition. Division came first, then addition. So I finished the parentheses, then exponents. Please excuse, so this, and then the multiplication. So I need to raise this. You'll use your exponent button to, I'm going to put parentheses so that I raise it to the 365 times 8. If I didn't put the parentheses in there, what would happen is it would raise it to the 365 and then times that answer by 8. And I want that 8 in the exponent, so that's why I put the parentheses. Yours, you might want to put, oh, you have a scientific calculator, so you might want to write this down and then times this in to find that answer separately and then do the exponent. So I apologize, that isn't exactly like a scientific calculator. Okay, and then we times this by the principal, which is 515, and there we go. That's the exact same as how we got it the other methods. Okay, so now we're going to come back into Excel and I'm going to type it in as the formula first. So I can type this in as equals and do my cell reference. The principal here is here. And in Microsoft Excel you have to do times because it has so many functions it needs to know that it's doing a mathematical calculation. Open the parentheses of 1 plus the rate. And Microsoft Excel knows that if I have a percent sign here, it's going to change it to the decimal when it's doing the calculating. So you don't have to do 0.05 stuff over that. Divided by the number of compounds, close the parenthesis, shift 6 to raise it to the number of n, y, and make sure that both n and y are in the exponent. Again, we put parentheses, n times y, close parentheses, and there we go. And let's just double check 662.59, which is exactly what we got previously. So that's another way to double check. And because I cell referenced everything in here and I didn't type in any numbers except the one, which is from the formula, and that's okay, that should be the same. Everything else is just referencing the 4 cells above it, which means when I click and drag, these will also reference the 4 cells above, and we're good to go. Okay, or you also have the future value function in Excel, in which you don't have to have the equation memorized. However, I think it's important to also have the equation memorized. So I think showing it both ways is great. Remember, Microsoft Excel's future value is going to calculate negatively, but ours is an investment. So I put a negative sign out front to counteract that. Then I open my parentheses and just cell reference. Again, rate. But don't forget, the future value doesn't prompt you to divide it by the number of compounds. I need to divide it by the number of compounds. comma. Number of periods is n times years, and then comma. The payment, we are not making a payment here, so I'm going to put 0, comma. The present value right now is my principal, $515, and I don't need a type. The type is just saying whether it's at the beginning or the end of the month. Ours, just ignore it, and it'll put a 0 in for us, which gives us the exact same as we got before, and then we just click and drag it over, which fills in the rest of it, and I can just highlight this and put that answer into here if I want. I've already typed it in, so I'm going to call it good. Okay, let's move on to the next example. This is dealing with payments. So above we were dealing with an investment. This is dealing with a loan payment. So the first thing I need, because we're going to do this by hand first, is find the loan payment formula. I'm going to copy this, and if you are confused about how to enter this in, we went to Insert, we went to Design, I type in P, and then I inserted a bracket here, and within that bracket I did a set of parentheses, and then I did a set of parentheses again to get the R over N up on top, and then down here, using your arrow buttons, you'll do 1 minus, do another set of parentheses, 1 plus, and then get your R over N. You can do a fraction, or you can type it in R over N. Just to prove that to you, R over N like this, and then press your space bar, and it'll make it look nice, and then raise it to N negative NY. So now that I've copied that, I'm going to come down here to do this by hand. Control V. There we go. And to show my work, I'm going to leave the formula there first, and then I'm going to come down here and insert what I need. Now, a little different here, each one of these are different, has a different amount of money, a different rate, and a different year. Where on numbers 1 and 2, just like in your homework, they're the exact same thing. The only thing we're looking at is comparing the interest compounds, or the compounds of interest. So in this one, we're actually going to have to type everything in differently for each one of these problems. So I have to type in, my principal is $55.75. Over here, my rate for the first problem is 0.03, changing it to a decimal. Number of compounds. When I'm looking for a payment, I need to look for the number of times I make my payment. In this case, we're told to make monthly payments, so I put a 12 there. Then I have to copy that, or change this down here, 0.03. Again, monthly payments is 12. Here I'm going to put in a 12. And then times Y for our first one is 3. And I've completed everything. So I can type this all into my calculator, or you're going to love this function part. Remember how we can just copy and paste it into here? So I'm going to press equals and then Control V. There we go. Now remember, you have to double check a couple of these things. So I'm going to make sure I have a multiplication here, and there's a lot of parentheses going on. So I'm just going to kind of double check what's going on. Here I have, it's copied over a set of parentheses around the 0 and the 0.03. So I'm going to get rid of that. Now it has another set of parentheses around the 0.03 and 12, which is good. It's saying this is a fraction and I'm dividing that. And I have some funky parentheses here, so I'm going to replace that. And you'll notice as I scroll over that, it tells me where the end of that parenthesis is. It kind of highlights it. Do you see how at the very end it's kind of bold? Which is good. And I can see there's a space here, so I'm just going to get rid of that just to make it look nice. And that's good. I want that whole thing to be on the bottom of the fraction. So I like that set of parentheses. Now I'm going to come in here. Oh, here's another one around the 0.03. I don't need that, so I'm going to delete that one out just so that I can look at every set of parentheses and know what I'm looking at. Okay, now this set says that I have all of the 1 plus 0.03 over 12. Good, I need that. So I'm going to get rid of this. And let's see, so that set of parentheses is here. and it's being raised to that, and that's in parentheses. Good. It's kind of looking like everything's good to go. Oh, I do see that I have this black set of parentheses that doesn't have a partner. And it should, because I need that whole thing being multiplied by 55.75. So I'm going to come over here and just add one more set of parentheses. And now I have one that combines the whole outside. So that was just a double check. Press enter and we get $1.62, which we can put here, or we can go back into our Word document and type it into here, or we can use Microsoft Excel to calculate further. And I know you're saying, but wait, now I have to do this 4 different times if I want to do this by hand. That's true. So let's go ahead and try Microsoft Excel's feature by cell referencing. So I have everything typed into my table here, and I'm going to cell reference everything for payment. So I can come in here. If you get confused about your formula, you can go double check your notes, or you can double check in, I'm going to actually copy and paste it over here so that, oops, copy, just so that we have a little reference, especially for you visual learners. There we go. And get rid of that so it's not in the way of that. Okay, so for you visual learners, you can double check up there. Okay, so we need this to calculate. I need the principal, and then I need to times, because Excel needs a multiplication sign between the number and the parenthesis. So again, just like I checked the first over here when we found the 162, I had to double check all those parentheses. So this case, this outside parenthesis is going to be this first very outside part. Now I need another set of parentheses to keep this r over n on the top part of the fraction. So I need another set. Then I'm going to reference r divided by, all of these will be monthly payments, so go ahead and type in 12, so the 12 will copy over. And close this, that first set of next set of parentheses says that I have r over n. Now I need to divide that, and to keep everything on the bottom, I need another set of parentheses. So this is just the keeping the bottom stuff together. Okay, so I have 1 minus, now this one's actually typed in as the next set of parentheses. So I'm going to do another set, 1 plus, and now I have to reference, and it's over here. Even though it looks like we're over here, make sure you're using the cell references for this first one. And I'm going to do r over, and n is 12. Now some of you are saying, wait, order of operations means I need to divide r over n first, so shouldn't that be in a set of parentheses? I could. However, it is redundant because Microsoft Excel knows the order of operations, and it will do the division before it adds the 1. So I'm okay to leave that one off. But I need to close that parenthesis. Whoops. I need to close that parenthesis, so now I have the 1 plus r over n, and I need to shift 6 to raise, and these two, I need them both to be up here in the exponent. So I'm going to do another set for the exponent. Negative, n of course is still 12, and times that by y. Closing that set of parentheses, and if you want to just double check, scroll over, whoops, please don't change anything. Okay, if you just want to scroll over that set of parentheses, it says that that's the exponent. Okay, and then I need to close that next set of parentheses, and you'll see that closed down here, the whole bottom, the division sign. But I need it all still to be multiplied by that principal out in front. And another way is to see that this black parenthesis doesn't have a partner yet. Now it does. And if you want to go double check those again, just to look at it, make sure, feel free. I'm going to press enter, and there we go. Now again, I need to format as currency, and there we go. Now everything within this formula here. Now, if you have something that pops up like I did, once you press enter, go back and just double check those parentheses and make sure you have them all correctly. And so now that everything here is a cell reference except the number 12 and the number 1, which is good because those are a part of what I'm doing with my payment formula. When I click and drag, it'll reference 3 cells above, and I only had to type that in once, which was kind of a beast. Or the built-in Microsoft Excel PMT formula, which really speeds things up. So here we reference the rate. Don't forget, you always divide the rate by n. In our case, n is standing for the number of payments per year. So ours is 12, or monthly payments. And 12 times a year times how many years? Close parenthesis. The present value, or the principal. The future value, because it's in these brackets, it means it's optional. If I don't put anything in, it'll just type out a 0 for us, which is good because this is a loan and we want it to zero out to nothing. So I can just press enter, I can type in a 0, I can close my parenthesis. I'm just going to type enter because I'm done. There we go. And you'll notice this is negative, where previously ours wasn't. This is because we typed it into our formula, and it we will interpret that as being $1.62 bill that we have to pay for this. Microsoft Excel actually calculates it out and says, hey, warning, this is money going away from you, so it's a negative. And because I cell referenced here, clicking and dragging, we have another option to fill that one in. Okay, and same thing here. I'm just going to speed us up by doing the payment one. If you would like to go through how to do all of the typing in of the formula or doing it over here separately for each individual problem, you could go ahead and do that by just rewinding the video, because I think the video is getting kind of long as it is. So I'm just going to hurry and go through the Microsoft Excel version here. So I'm going to put equals, and then the rate divided by monthly payments, comma. Again, the number of periods, or n per number of periods per year, is 12 times a year times 3 years, comma. The present value in our case is up here. Press enter, and then I just need to click and drag that direction. There we go. And so if I wanted to fill this in, I could copy and go back into my document, and here I'm going to highlight all of those, Control V, and it pastes it in for me. And that's kind of nice because it does show me that those are also negative. Okay, one more way of doing this, sorry I didn't mention, instead of doing a cell reference, I could do equals PMT and actually type all of this in, 0.02 divided by 12, comma, 12 times 3, comma, 1500, comma, oh, I can just leave that and press enter. So I could actually type this out if I was doing something separate, just wanting to find out one of those, and so that would work as well. The reason I did this was cell referencing so I could fill in my whole table. Okay, so one last thing, I know you don't have one of these on your homework, but I wanted to go through this. Find the final amount of a bank account in which you started with a lump sum of $2,000 and then contributed $25 monthly for 15 years at an interest rate of 0.08. Okay, so that has a combination of things. And I'm going to scroll up here. In fact, maybe so I don't have to scroll so much, I'm going to delete some of these spaces just to bring things together. Okay, so I'm going to come up here. Here is my formula. The savings plan formula for lump sum and additional payments. All we've done is take the savings plan for a lump sum and add it to when I have a payment that I'm adding towards an investment. And that's all it is. As a warning, in Math 108, they give you both of these formulas, so it's kind of nice to know that you're already doing 108 stuff. However, they don't tell you to add them together. They assume that you just know how to do that, that if you have a lump sum and then you're having a payment, that to find the final amount, you add it together. So that's just something for those of you who are moving into 108, which I hope is everyone. Just kind of keep that in mind that they don't make this kind of explicit. So because I already went through how to type both of those in, I'm just going to copy. Oh, I guess I should copy the whole formula. Copy, paste it down here. And that's how we would do it with the formula method that we learned from the book in section 3.3. I'm going to copy it again and just start typing everything in. So the principal was $2,000. So we have our lump sum. The rate is 0.8%, so 0.008 to change it to a decimal. The number, it's compounded. It's not telling me how much that interest is compounded, so because I just said, I just made this up, so I'm going to continue making it up by saying that it's monthly. Then over here, N, we're going to still do 12 and times. I apologize, I didn't finish out that problem. Y, we have 15 years. Okay, now we add in our payment of $25. And we have a rate here of 0.008. And by the way, this is probably a more realistic percent in our economy today. You'll notice that in a lot of our investment problems, they have rather high percentages. It even goes up to something like 8%, which is really, really hard to find, if at all. And then we divide that by N. I'm making monthly payments, so that one was told to us. 12 times the number of years is still 15. And on the bottom, we have still 12, and the rate is 0.008. There we go. And so we can type that into our calculator, or we can copy and paste that into Excel. However, in typing this into Excel, like we learned with the payment formula, you're going to have a lot of parentheses to check here. And it gets kind of crazy. And you can go ahead and do Excel and the calculator. However, I'm going to show you the very fast way of doing this. We can do negative future value. It's so much faster. So the rate was 0.008. Don't forget to divide it by 12. The number of periods is 12 times, oops, I forgot, was it 15 years? Just double checking. Yep, 15 years, comma. The payment, we did $25 payments, and the present value is $1,500, I believe. Oh, $2,000. Wrong problem. So we had our lump sum, and type of we don't need, so we can just press enter, and we don't have to worry about the thousands of parentheses that can occur when I copy and paste that in, or even just typing it in, or even putting it in your calculator. So that's very convenient. But we've gone through enough of that if you would like to go ahead and copy and paste this in, just beware of those parentheses and make sure that each of them has a partner and that you have a multiplication sign between the number and the set of parentheses. And if you don't have that, then it'll pop up kind of a warning sign like you saw before, and then you'll just go through and make sure. I don't think this one's going to work. I didn't check those. Oh, it happened to work really nice. So there we go. And make sure to format that as currency. So apparently we have everything good to go on that one. So we have two different ways. Really fast with Excel. You can still go ahead and use your calculator as well. All right, that is everything for 3.3 part 2. If you have questions, go ahead and email me, but good luck on your test or on your homework, and also on your, what is this called? The loan and savings and loan practice. And also with your life plan part 3. All right. Hope to you join me for the next one.